Well, a very good morning to you. Happy Easter. I hope you're having a good Easter Sunday morning as I join you live from a pretty nice South Manchester. It's lovely, in fact. A lovely morning. Getting a bit cloudy now, but it's nice and warm, nice and mild, and I'm in fine fettle. Thanks for choosing Sunday Views this morning. Plenty of other things you could be doing, but you decided to join me. Thanks for that. Going to take a look at the front pages of the Sunday newspapers as usual, and we'll have a chat about them. Not sure we'll get to the full hour. We might not. Not many Sunday Politico programmes on air this morning because it's Easter Sunday. A few interesting things to talk about though, and as usual, between now and the end of the programme, if you've got something you'd like to tell me, it's best to tweet it to me. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. That's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Welcome to Sunday View.
Asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
All very good. So it's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter, then Sunday View live on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv as well. Great to be alive. Great to be with you this morning.
It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
I have to confess, I had quite a lot to drink yesterday and was absolutely plastered when I finally got to bed last night. I fell asleep on the sofa. The future Mrs. Allen gave up on me sometime before midnight, and I woke up just before 2 a.m. fairly hammered. I'm not endorsing that sort of behaviour, by the way. I don't do it that often, but I was properly hammered. But when the old alarm went off this morning bright and early, it didn't bother me. I was in fine fettle. I was in good form anyway. There was no danger of calling off Sunday View. I used to say to myself, if I ever miss work because of a hangover, I'll give up the drink entirely. Never miss work because of a hangover. It's unacceptable. Good morning to Samantha Jordan. Good morning, Samantha. Thanks for the Easter wishes to everybody who sent Easter greetings this morning as well. I suppose it's great fun if you've got youngsters, I suppose. If you don't, and you moved away from the old religion a long time ago, it's just like any other day, really. But happy Easter to you anyway. Right, so I'm going to talk a little bit later on. I got an email from my friend, and I say colleague because she's very helpful and has always been very helpful to me with ideas and with thoughts and opinions. Jean-Anne Crowley, I've mentioned Jean-Anne many times, and she's been on the programme, of course, a couple of times, has Jean-Anne. But she asked me, would there be anything in the programme today about the I Believe Her movement, the protests that have taken place in my country. It's my country. After the rugby trial, the sensational rugby trial, where 2 rugby players have been found not guilty of raping a woman after a trial, of course. Paddy Jackson is one of those. I suppose he's probably the most well-known of the 2. I will talk about this later on because it's been spoken about on Sky News and BBC News 24 today. It's an interesting trial. The verdict, I think the protests centre around the alleged treatment, the alleged mistreatment of the alleged victim during the trial and the amount of time she had to spend on the stand. There's a lot of people unhappy with the way that went. The men have been found not guilty, right? It's important to say that. In fact, it's more than important. It's very important to say that these men have been found not guilty. Stuart Olding, the other guy, and Paddy Jackson. But there's been absolute outrage. Again, we've had a woman called Nolene Blackwell, the executive director of the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. She's been quoted in the press today about why there's such public anger over the manner in which the trial was conducted, as opposed to anger at the acquittals, right? So we'll get into that a little bit later on. It is interesting, I think. It is interesting. I thought about a spoof article because today's April Fool's Day, and I thought to myself, could I do a spoof article and put it on richieallen.co.uk? But again, because of my shenanigans last night, I couldn't think of anything. It's as simple as that. And I'm not usually, when it comes to mischief making, I'm pretty decent, but I couldn't think of anything, any spoof article to put on richieallen.co.uk. Anyway, let's have a look at the Sunday Times. A lot of anti-Semitism stuff in the press today. I suppose you won't be surprised by that. Exposed Corbyn's hate factory. That's the headline on the front page of the Times, the Sunday Times. Exposed Corbyn's hate factory. Does he have a hate factory, Jeremy? Well, he doesn't. But anyway, it doesn't stop the Sunday Times trying to link Jeremy to some Facebook groups where people say some silly things. This is the McCarthyism I alluded to in my articles during the week. My long-winded article, it must be said. So here's what the Times is saying. Jeremy Corbyn faces a damaging new anti-Semitism scandal as a bombshell dossier reveals the full extent of anti-Jewish, violent and abusive comments on Facebook groups, mobilising his most fervent supporters. Do you know what any of that means? Neither do I. 12 senior staff, writes the Times, working for the Labour leader and the Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, are members of groups containing anti-Semitic and violent comments, including praise for Adolf Hitler and threats to kill Theresa May. The most comprehensive investigation conducted into 20 of the biggest pro-Corbyn Facebook groups, numbering 400,000 members, found routine attacks on Jewish people, including Holocaust denial. The dossier was compiled over 2 months by whistleblowers working with the Sunday Times in the groups. Whistleblowers. This is hilarious, isn't it? The idea that people would be lurking in Facebook groups. Hang on a second now. Lurking in Facebook groups and copying down and recording people's comments. The idea that these idiots would be whistleblowers is laughable. Right? Laughable. Madness, this is madness, right? But anyway, the whistleblowers, and by the way, I'm doing that annoying thing with my fingers. Whistleblowers, inverted commas, uncovered more than 2,000 racist, anti-Semitic, misogynistic, violent and abusive messages. The bastards. Lord Carlyle, the former independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, said the comments appeared to breach hate crime laws. Keep that at the back of your heads there, dear listeners, dear listener. Dear listener, I've only got one listener, dear listener. Keep that at the back of your head. The comments breach hate crime laws. The investigation found... Are you still laughing? Should I pause for a minute while you pick yourself up off the floor? That the Times would label people lurking in Facebook groups as whistleblowers. You're still laughing. All right. Anyway, the investigation found, wait for this, posts including support for Adolf Hitler. But he's dead. He died in South America, didn't he? Or somewhere. He's dead. With one saying the Nazi leader should have finished off the job, and another one claiming the deaths of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust was a big lie. A Labour supporter, Patrick Hasseldine, I think, who posted an image of the Israeli flag on one Labour group on Facebook with the swastika replacing the Star of David. Kill him! Arrest him! You can't be doing that, Patrick. A man called Ian Love, who's a Momentum organiser on one of the groups, he claimed the former Prime Minister Tony Blair was Jewish to the core. And he told the Sunday Times last week he believed the Rothschild banking family controlled most of the world's finances. They do. They do. Not just the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Rockefellers, the Schiffs. Right? Anyway, these Facebook groups, which include We Support Jeremy Corbyn, which has 68,000 members, have played a key role in helping Corbyn win, blah, 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 blah. This is bullshit, right? And you know what's really annoying about this? The people who wrote this article are well aware of a very important fact, dear listener. And that fact is that people can be added to Facebook groups without their consent. It happens to me all the time. And it drives me fucking mad that I find out I'm a member of some Facebook group. I didn't join it. I was added to it by somebody. And all manner of stuff could be said in that group. Which, of course, I wouldn't deny anybody the rights to say whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. But somebody could say, oh, look, your man Alan, He says he's not anti-Semitic, your man Alan, but he really is. He's a member of this group, but I didn't join the group. And the Times knows this. This is garbage masquerading as journalism. I can go on Facebook now. I'm connected to a few thousand people on Facebook, and I can start adding my friends to groups. I can set up a group called The Jews Are Dirty, Filthy Animals. I can set up a group and I can call it The Jews Are Dirty, Filthy Animals. Now, of course, I wouldn't do that because that's disgusting. But I could do, and I could add my friend, the actress Jean Ann Crowley, put her in there. I could make her a moderator of the group. I could do all of that, and she wouldn't even know about it. And the Times knows this, right? Right. No evidence that Corbyn set up any of these groups or knew anything about them. Now, you know I've got no time for Corbyn, you know this, but this is rubbish. And hate crime. Hate can't be criminalised. And I've talked a lot about that in recent weeks and months. Hate crime. You can't criminalise hate. Somebody's going to hate something or somebody or some group. Nothing you can do about that. You've got to live with them. And you've got to challenge them. That's what we do, don't we? We allow everybody to say whatever it is they want to say, and we engage them. Sky News' Laura Bundock has been following this story for Sky News, of course. This is a long report. It's about 2 minutes long. Have a listen. This is Laura Bundock following all of these allegations about Corbyn. Right. Yeah. This is what happens, you see, when you have a hangover. Let's try that again. Here's Laura Bundock for Sky News.
Yeah, that's right. So David Garrard has donated £1.5 million to the Labour Party since...
All right, I should have set that up a little bit better. All of this talk has resulted in a wealthy Jewish businessman called Sir David Garrard. He's decided, Garrard, he can't put up with any more of this anti-Semitism, so he's not going to donate to the Labour Party anymore. Right? So they've lost a big donor. This is Laura Bundock.
Yeah, that's right. So David Garrard has donated £1.5 million to the Labour Party since 2003, but clearly very unhappy with their response to this issue of anti-Semitism within the party, something he clearly believes has not been sufficiently tackled. He is a wealthy Jewish businessman, has a property empire, and as I say, has donated a lot of money to the party. He has issued a statement outlining the reasons why he's decided to leave Labour. He says it has failed to expel many of those who have engaged in the grossest derogatory fantasies about Jewish Zionist conspiracies and Jewish characterizations and accusations which conjure up the very kind of anti-Semitic attacks that led to such unbearable consequences for innocent millions in the past. So very strong language from him, reiterating his belief that the party isn't doing enough about this. Now, also today we have an investigation carried out by the Sunday Times newspaper, which looked at 20 of the biggest pro-Jeremy Corbyn Facebook groups, which between them have some 400,000 members. And it says it's uncovered 2,000 messages which were anti-Semitic, they were racist, they were misogynistic, violent or abusive. Now, of course, these groups are not controlled by Labour, and that is something that Labour has been keen to point out. In a statement, Labour responded saying they're not run by the Labour Party or connected to the party in any way. The Labour Party is committed to challenging and campaigning against anti-Semitism in all its forms.
Now, is Laura Bundock going to be a good little journalist and add to the Labour statement? Now, she's not a Labour Party member. She is a journalist. She's got to be objective. So she's just said that Labour denies all knowledge of the groups. The groups are not run by Labour. Is Laura going to be a good little journalist and add in the very important point of fact that people can be added to these groups without their knowledge? Is Laura going to do that? Feck, no, she's not.
All its forms. Any complaints of anti-Semitism are taken extremely seriously. These are fully investigated in line with our rules and procedures, and any appropriate disciplinary action taken. One of the prominent groups, We Support Jeremy Corbyn, has had a lot of comments posted on its site since this article came out, defending its place as a perfectly normal place for political comment, political debate. And you can understand that there are so many, it's got some 68 28,000 members, lots and lots of people there. These sorts of forums, they're not connected to the Labour Party, but they are a place for political discussion, and that kind of discussion will involve all sorts of comments and messages. It's a very difficult issue for Jeremy Corbyn because clearly they're not directly affiliated to the party. They are using his name, but he has a very difficult decision and problem ahead. How can he and how should he try and control their content when they are using his name and image in many ways?
He shouldn't be trying to do any of that. And Laura should have told you that groups can add people without their permission or their knowledge. But she didn't, because this is journalism in the 21st century, right? Right? This is a free speech issue. It's as simple as that. It's cut and dry. It's black and white. There are no shades of grey. Corbyn doesn't have to do anything. The only thing he should have done last week was told these muppets to bury themselves, to go and take a run and jump off the nearest cliff, is what he should have done when they started accusing him and his mates of racism and bigotry and anti-Semitism. The timing of all of this week is very interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes, but we better look at some of the other papers. The Mail on Sunday, Corbyn's getting it in the neck. The headline is, Corbyn faces new rebellion over wife-beater MP. The Mail on Sunday says that Corbyn faces a fresh revolt from female MPs within the party over allegations that the party failed to act when a male MP was accused of domestic violence. Now, the male politician allegedly used violence against his wife on several occasions, according to the Mail on Sunday. The paper says that Labour sources denied the party had failed to act and said the leader's office had taken every opportunity to try to deal with these allegations. The first paragraph of the Mail on Sunday story is interesting. It says Corbyn faces a fresh revolt. A meeting of Labour women MPs attended by ex-Deputy Leader Harriet Harman backed calls to suspend the politician from the party after he allegedly used violence against his wife on repeated occasions. Harman advised colleagues at the meeting of the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party that the complaint against the MP could be taken up with the Labour leader, his chief whip Nick Brown, and party officials. But sources say there were also threats to shame the party leadership into taking action by making their call public if the Labour whip wasn't removed from the MP concerned. Women MPs were told that the alleged wife-beater had been reported to Labour HQ, but officials had failed to act. One source told the Mail on Sunday the allegations against the man are horrific. There is no way he should be an MP, and the party cannot just sit on its hands and do nothing. But has he been arrested? Has he been charged? Will he be going to court? These are good questions, right? No matter how heinous a crime is, until somebody is arrested, charged and ultimately convicted for it, why should they be losing their jobs? Those are good questions, right? But nobody seems to answer these questions, let alone ask them. Nobody's asking these questions. If this man is beating up his wife horrifically, well, he's a bastard. Of course you don't want to associate with him. You don't want him in your party. You don't want him anywhere near you. Right? But has he been arrested, charged, gone to court? If not, well, they're allegations, aren't they? The Observer on Sunday, the Sunday Observer. Leading Jewish donor ditches Labour over anti-Semitism. We've heard about this already. Sir David Garrard, who's given £1.5 million to the party over about 15 years. He said the party he had supported no longer exists. We heard about that a few minutes ago from Laura Bundock. There's no respite from this bollocks. None. And you know what really upsets me about it more than anything is that Corbyn's devotees will say that this is evidence that Jeremy is a real threat to the status quo, to the establishment. That's why they're trying to destroy him. That's what his devotees will say. Identity politics, identitarians. It's wrong. I don't believe that for a minute. They don't care about Corbyn. He was never a threat. They're using Corbyn as a kind of a poster boy to criminalise criticism of Zionism, to criminalise criticism of Israel. They want to make it criminal to mention, for example, just for one example, the overrepresentation of Jews in US politics, in the media. Zionist Jews. I'll give you an example. the Federal Reserve, which I could talk about for hours and hours and hours and hours. And poor old Woodrow Wilson, God love him, who handed control of US finance to a cartel of private banks, which makes up the Federal Reserve. Well, a Jewish person has been chairman of the Federal Reserve for nearly half of the total years of its existence. It's been in existence over 100 years, 105 years, right? For more than half the time, a Jewish person has basically run the Fed. And in the last 40 years, a Jewish person has led it for over 95% of the time. So in the last 50 years, 96% of the Federal Reserve chairmen have been Jews, despite the fact that Jews make up 3% of the population of America. That's overrepresentation. And it's very interesting. And it deserves to be talked about and looked into. Now, we're not talking about ordinary Jews like you and me. I'm not saying I'm Jewish. Ordinary folks. We're talking about Zionist Jews. Hardcore Zionist Jews. Right? So that's incredible overrepresentation. As for Jews in the media, well, they've bragged about it. The Jerusalem Post have bragged about the control of Hollywood, the control of US media. They've bragged about it openly. So these are things that are worth looking into. Because of media plurality, the fact it doesn't exist, and the problems that come about when you don't have an open media, a free media, a truly free press. So you've got to talk about this stuff. But they want to criminalise that. And they also want to shut down any criticism of what they have been doing in Gaza forever. But of course, what they've been doing in Gaza over the last few days. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's what's going on here. So it's not about Jeremy Corbyn, right? Not about Jeremy Corbyn. By the way, the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, the current chairman, Trump's appointment, he's the first non-Jewish person to chair the Fed since 1979. Right? Right. Okay. Oh, Jesus. This ludicrous witch hunt that we've seen in the last few days, with no evidence to support that anybody's really, that anybody really hates Jews or has got any issue with Jews. I wonder, could that witch hunt be connected to what's gone on in Palestine over the last few days, where we've seen 17 Palestinians murdered in cold blood, where we've seen children being shot to death by Israeli Defence Force snipers. I posted a video yesterday from liveleak.com. God bless Hayden Hewitt and liveleak.com. Thank God for them, because they will publish this stuff. So you can see some Israeli kids running, and you can see one of them getting shot in the chest, instantly killed by an IDF sniper. And this morning, the Israeli military has warned it might take action against terrorist targets inside Gaza. I wonder. Is any of this Corbyn stuff related to an escalation of the mass murder that Israel engages in whenever it can, whenever it feels like it? A guy called Brigadier General Ronan Manilis told journalists that Hamas, obviously the group that controls Gaza, was using Palestinian protests as a cover for launching attacks on Israel. Bullshit. No evidence to support it. The Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas, he said Israel bears full responsibility for the bloodshed that we saw on Good Friday and yesterday. Do you know what the BBC said? It makes me laugh. It's the single deadliest day in the Israel-Palestine conflict since the 2014 Gaza war. Gaza war. There's no conflict there. There's just the brutal subjugation of an ethnic group of people by mass murdering maniacs. That's not a conflict. And what happened in Gaza in 2014 wasn't a war. It was genocide. It wasn't a war. It's not a war when you've got one side penned into an area they can't get out of. And all they've got are rockets. Wile E. Coyote has better rockets than the Palestinians. Honest to Christ, you'd be better throwing darts than the Palestinian rockets. Really. Madness this, isn't it? It's connected though to the Corbyn stuff, it really is. But don't confuse that with Corbyn being attacked because he's a threat to the system. He isn't. He isn't. This is about shutting down dissent, opposition to Zionism in general. Palestinians, of course, marched to the border to protest for the next 6 weeks. They call it the Great March of Return. The 70th anniversary of the founding of Israel looms. They're pissed off. Nobody gives a shit about the Palestinians. Nobody. The Israeli soldiers just opened fire, just killing innocent people, people not armed, just killing them. It's all there. Al Jazeera have got the images, but they won't show you the full videos, but liveleak.com will. Now on Friday, on Good Friday, the Kuwaiti ambassador to the United Nations called an emergency meeting at the Security Council, and he wanted the UN Security Council to condemn the Israeli use of force. The Kuwaiti ambassador's name is Mansour Al-Otaibi. Mansour Al-Otaibi. Here he is speaking with Al Jazeera.
This is a violation of the international humanitarian law. As occupying power, also they are violating their obligations in accordance to Geneva Convention.
What should the Council do now?
We will ask the Council to take action.
Originally, this was supposed to be a closed meeting. Behind the scenes, the US was blocking a council statement condemning Israel, and so Kuwait threatened to call an open meeting. The US, being represented by a mid-level diplomat rather than its ambassador Nikki Haley, didn't back down.
We urge those involved to take steps to lower tensions and reduce the risk of new clashes. Bad actors who use protests as a cover to incite violence endanger innocent lives.
The Palestinian ambassador was very clear about his government's view of what happened on the Gaza border.
Those who brought the violence and the killing are the Israeli armed forces, our people in the Gaza Strip, raising not a banner of faction, but the Palestinian flag, demonstrated peacefully, and they were attacked by the Israeli armed forces. It's a massacre by them.
Yes, because Israel is run by maniacs. I'm not saying Israelis or Jews are maniacs. They're not. There's huge opposition to this inside Israel. You just don't hear about it very often. But it has been run by basket case complete lunatics since it was illegally founded. That's a fact. Lunatics. You might have seen the footage of the soldiers. I posted on our Facebook page today the IDF detaining a 3-year-old boy. Did you see that over the weekend? And the father is pleading with them, don't take him away. The child is tiny. He's the smallest 3-year-old I've ever seen in my life. And they gave him back eventually. They said he had a screwdriver. A 3-year-old. This is lunacy. It's a lunatic asylum. The Israeli government. Now, RT interviewed Netanyahu's foreign affairs spokesman, or foreign media spokesman. Benjamin Netanyahu is the Israeli Prime Minister. He's a basket case, barking mad, stone cold madman. Netanyahu is. No two ways about it. Now, when I say RT interviewed his spokesman, interview is a very loose term. So the foreign media spokesman for Netanyahu is a guy called David Keyes. Have a listen to this tidal wave of bullshit from David Keyes.
It's a tragedy what's happening, and unfortunately it's happening because Hamas is trying to infiltrate Israel with thousands of people trying to storm into Israel, and it's shooting rockets, and it's laying bombs, and it's shooting guns, and Israel is simply defending itself from this onslaught. And
at any time now, the presenter should jump in and say, is there any evidence that they're laying bombs? Because we didn't see any of that, but he doesn't.
And of course, it's particularly dangerous because of what Hamas is, a terrorist organization that openly declares its aim to destroy Israel and openly calls for genocide of Jews. So this is outrageous what's happening, and Hamas is clearly to blame.
You don't see this as an overreaction because on the other side of the argument, people say, people are protesting, but we're seeing people with Molotov cocktails, they're throwing stones, and in response they're getting fired at with live ammunition and tank shells, and 17 people have been killed.
Well, I've been to many protests in my time, and at none of the protests I've been to have people shot rockets, have people tried to infiltrate a sovereign state, or have people tried to lay bombs in order to kill as many civilians as possible.
Evidence of people putting bombs at the checkpoint, at the area where the protests were taking place. Any evidence at all?
As possible. The aim of this event is to swarm into Israel and to overwhelm it. And it's part of a long track record of Hamas waging war against Israel, launching tens of thousands of missiles, conducting suicide bombings.
Tens of thousands of missiles. What a liar. Anytime he wanted, the RT guy could have jumped in.
Against cafes and against civilians and in buses. This is what Hamas is. They don't hide their aim. The leadership of Hamas is very clear. They say openly, like Ahmed Bahar, the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, says, we will kill every Jew down to the very last one.
Yeah, he's not
and
jumping
Ismail
in.
Haniya and Mahmoud Zahar openly declare that Jews are vermin and cancer, and therefore we will wipe them from the face of the earth.
Jump in.
That's what this is about, and it needs to stop. And the real tragedy is that it can stop now.
Wow.
There doesn't need to be any bloodshed.
Jump in there.
There doesn't need to be any killings. There doesn't need to be any injured.
Yeah. You see, in my many years as a mainstream radio presenter and producer, I was never rude to anybody. I wouldn't have been rude to him, but I would have said Mr. Keys with the greatest respect. There are videos online of young men, teenage boys, being shot down. They have nothing in their hands. Nothing. They're wearing T-shirts, shot in the chest by a sniper. Are you honestly telling me that there is justification for that? That's all you have to do. And your job then as a presenter is done. You've asked them the question. Let him try and justify it. And if he waffles on again, stop him. I have a video here, Mr. Keys, of a young boy being murdered in cold blood by a sniper. Would you like me to show it to you? Dreadful. And then Keys, this spokesman for Nutty Yahoo, spins the most wildest of fiction. And again, he's not challenged. Listen to this bollocks.
And we just saw in this latest event that Hamas sent a 7-year-old girl to try to be shot right by Israel's security.
Oh, Christ. If you dried that one out, you could fertilise the lawn with it. The Israelis have been using that bullshit story forever and a day. They are hiding behind children as shields. They are sending children right up to the soldiers in the hope that the soldiers will kill them so that they can martyr, they can scream and cry and all. This is bullshit. And again, the presenter doesn't say, what evidence is there to suggest they sent a 7-year-old girl to the front line?
Defense. Think about what that says about an organization. That it uses innocent, impressionable children in order to achieve its war
Please
aims.
jump in.
That tells you everything you need to know about Hamas. So the whole world should be asking Hamas, why aren't you telling your people to stop this outrage? Why do you continue to wage war against Israel? Because the second that Hamas says that...
let me tell you, we're not going to hear any more of that. I promise you, that interview is on RT's own YouTube channel. He does not interrupt him at any time. Never. Never. No. Mr. Propagandist for Nutty Yahoo, you say whatever you want. I will sit there grinning goofily right back at you. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to challenge you. I'm not going to contradict you. I'm not going to repeatedly put it to you that your soldiers are murderers. By the way, Israel announced this morning that there will be no inquiry into the murders of these unarmed protesters. Why the hell should there be an inquiry? We're going to take a break. This is Sunday View for Easter Sunday. It's April 1st, 2018. My name is Richie Allen. It's always great to be with you. It really is. Let's have a break then. Back in a minute with plenty more.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
The Richie Allen Show relies on your support. Go to richieallen.co.uk and set up a monthly donation today. Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
So I believe, in conclusion, that the witch hunt against Corbyn and members of the Labour Party is definitely connected to the things we've seen in Gaza over the last few days, and it's connected to Brigadier General Dickhead from the Israeli Defence Forces saying we might very well make incursions into Gaza to take on terrorists. Of course it's related. What they've got planned in that country, in Palestine, is ultimately to get rid of every single one of them. They want every single Arab, every single Palestinian out of there. They want to continue to build illegal settlements, and they want to make life so bad for generations to come of young Palestinians that they'll eventually just leave, that they'll run. They'll go and seek their fortune, their lives elsewhere in the Middle East. That's what's going on here. And that can only be done if people are terrified to criticise it or do anything about it. And that's what they're trying to do. And they've been trying to do that for years, but in recent weeks, they're really ramping up the attack on so-called hate speech, when hate speech is a misnomer from the get-go anyway. It's ridiculous. The Sunday Telegraph then, this is an interesting story. Headline is, Election Watchdogs Face Calls to Resign Over Brexit Bias. Yeah, of course there's been bias against the UK's decision to leave the European Union, but the Sunday Telegraph has a story. Their own investigation has found that 4 of the Electoral Commission's 10 commissioners, including the chairman, had made pronouncements on Brexit since the referendum, and all of the pronouncements have been backing Remain. This is quite extraordinary. The Electoral Commission has 10 commissioners since the referendum. 4 of these commissioners, including the chairman, have made public statements backing Remain. Now, their code of conduct, the Electoral Commission's code of conduct, dictates that commissioners must act at all times to uphold the impartiality of the commission. But it's not gone on. People like Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, very prominent Brexiteer in the Conservative Party, he's well cheesed off by this, and he's looking at an inquiry. We'll be up to our next in inquiries. We'll never go anywhere. But it's very serious. Rees-Mogg said, and I quote, "This is very serious, as the regulator of elections must be impartial. Anyone who has called for a second referendum or made political statements on Brexit ought to recuse him or herself from any decision with regard to the then referendum." I would say to Jacob Rees-Mogg, terminological inexactitude, darling, I would say to him, it's too late, Jacob. It matters not, because the transition deal that was agreed between Barnier and David Davis, which has been ultimately sanctioned by the Prime Minister, that transition deal basically keeping us in the European Union until New Year's Eve 2020, has ended, for me anyway, any notion that the UK would ever leave. We're not leaving. Right? Here's a very interesting story, and it's in the Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph today. Have a listen, because we talked about this last week. This is interesting. The headline is, "If parents want to take their children out of class, let them. It's school, not prison." Do you like that? It's a good headline, that. I talked about fines last week. I did a story last week about children having to ask for toilet roll in the class before being allowed to go to the toilet, because this is in where was the school again? I can't remember. I'll dig up my story in a minute. But this is a really interesting article by Tom Welsh. Tom Welsh, writing for the Sunday Telegraph. "If parents want to take their children out of class, let them. It's school, not prison." Do you want me to read a little bit of it for you? He says, can you spot the irony? Just weeks after schools were closed because of levels of snow that previous generations would have greeted with a hearty shrug, giving teachers a few days off and creating enormous inconvenience for families, figures are released showing that the numbers of fines issued to parents for their children's unauthorised absences, often holidays during term time, is on the rise. It would be funny, writes Tom Welch, if it weren't so serious, for there has been a disturbing shift in the relationship between parents and the education system. He writes, it was always a mistake to make the debate about parents taking their children on holiday during term time solely about money. Yes, as families will be discovering this Easter, travelling during the school holidays is expensive, and it is certainly revealing that many would rather pay the £60 fine levied by the local education authority and enjoy an illicit break. But that isn't the principle at stake, writes Tom Welch. Last week, the Royal Academy of Dance warned that head teachers were preventing children from attending ballet exams during school because they didn't count it as an exceptional circumstance, which would make the absence permissible under national guidelines. Welch goes on to write, the same is presumably true of other extracurricular activities from music to sport. There is discussion to be had whether parents are fulfilling their moral obligation to educate their children by taking them to Disneyland. No parent prepared to sit through interminable hours of dance practice could reasonably be described as deadbeat. Very good. But he goes on to write then, does Welch, this is an assault on the rights of parents to make decisions in the best interests of their children. And that's exactly what's going on. That's exactly what's going on. We now have a local authority or a situation where around the country, local authorities are effectively taking over or taking the position of the parent and taking the rights of parents to make decisions on behalf of their children out of their hands. It's an excellent point he makes. He then goes on to talk about John Stuart Mill and the original liberal arguments in favour of a compulsory education. We could do something on that in the programme in the coming days or weeks. I think we should get into that. How it came to be that education came to be compulsory. He talks about how John Stuart Mill distinguished explicitly between the state requiring an education so that somebody would be able to read and write and the state directing how that education is delivered. And that part of it should be up to individual choice, said John Stuart Mill in days of yore. This is a very, very important argument. And I think we'll get into this in the programme in the coming days and weeks. There's no doubt about that. This is an assault on the rights of parents to make decisions in the best interests of their children. And it's a tyranny of sorts at 17 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. This is Sunday View, by the way. Thanks for tuning into it. Always good to have your company. I said we mightn't make the hour, and I don't think we will, but I have a story that's very interesting. Jean Ann was talking to me about this story on an email this morning. The rugby player Paddy Jackson was cleared of rape and sexual assault last Wednesday after a very long trial. It lasted 42 days. Now, the trial came about because of allegations made by a then 19-year-old woman following a party at Jackson's house after a night out in Belfast in June of 2016. Now, Stuart Olding, Jackson's teammate, he was also cleared of forcing the woman to perform oral sex. Now, Jackson has been saying even over the weekend that he is watching social media and he's reading the newspapers with an eagle eye. And he's saying basically that he will sue anybody who libels him. Absolutely right. That is his right. But he's been very, very much, he's gone to great lengths to warn people, say anything about me and I'll sue you. Now, 4,000 people protested in Dublin yesterday. There's a lot of anger about, and there's a lot of anger around how the alleged victim was treated. We shouldn't say alleged victim anymore because they've been found not guilty. So we should say a lot of anger about how the woman was treated when she was in the witness box. And I mentioned earlier, Nolene Blackwell, the executive director of the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, she said that the level of public anger over the way the trial was conducted has led to a huge outpouring of support for the woman, who's now 21, but it's also led to people making donations to rape crisis centres around Ireland. A lot of money pouring into rape crisis centres, and hashtag I believe her has gone viral. Now, this was talked about this morning on Sky News on their newspaper review segment, and there's a woman that I know quite well. Her name is Kate Smurthwaite. She used to come on my radio shows in Spain some years ago. I've not spoken to her for years. Kate Smurthwaite used to write for The Guardian, still does sometimes. She's a feminist and a comedian, and she talks about it because it's been covered extensively by the Belfast Telegraph. Do you want to hear what Kate Smurthwaite had to say about this today? I do have the clip. I'm on the ball despite the hangover. Here's Kate Smurthwaite.
It's interesting, actually, that it's not been covered in any of the UK-wide papers, but the Belfast Telegraph picking up, quite rightly, I think, on the enormous protests happening right across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, Dublin, Belfast, Galway and Cork, following on from the rape trial, which closed in Belfast a few days ago, in which 2 rugby players were acquitted of rape. And what's come out of that trial is so many problems with the way that the trial was run. The alleged victim was put on the stand for 7 days, questioned for 7 days. The defendants got about a day of questioning each, and this woman was put through this incredibly arduous process. And we have in Dublin 4,000 protesters outside City Hall with placards saying, "I believe her, I stand with survivors," and of course hashtag Me Too. And I think what is coming out of this is an enormous sense of a wave of feeling that we need to look at the way that rape trials are run. We need to look at the fact that the conviction rate remains, absolutely trivial, in fact, across the UK. And we need to talk about whether jury trials are necessarily the way forward, or whether we need experts to come in, or whether we need specialist juries and all this kind of stuff, because it feels like people are saying we can't put people through this kind of process anymore.
But these men were acquitted.
They were.
So we have to be very careful with this, don't we? I mean, these are innocent men.
Right, that's a very good point. These men have been found innocent. That's the most important thing to keep in mind, I think. That was Stephen Dixon there, jumping in and saying, let's keep in whatever these protesters are saying, whatever issues they might have with how the woman was questioned. And I think she was on the witness stand for 7 days. And I covered quite a few criminal trials over the years. I did cover one sexual assault trial years and years and years ago. I don't remember somebody being on the witness stand for 7 days. I don't remember ever seeing anything like that. Right. Shall we hear a little bit more from Kate Smurthwaite? So what was her response to that question? Let's remember, these men have been found innocent by a jury of their peers. Kate.
Well, these are men who've been found not guilty, absolutely, and therefore they have absolutely... But we've got to remember that this is about finding a small amount of reasonable doubt is what we're looking at. We're not looking at... Do you know what I mean? When people they're found guilty or not guilty, nobody's ever found innocent. If you're accused of something, then they have to prove that you're guilty. The burden of evidence is there. So what we have to be careful of, if somebody's found not guilty, that doesn't mean the accuser is lying. That means there is enough doubt about it that we should treat them as though they were innocent. And that's exactly what's going on.
That's not how it's viewed legally, is it?
No, it is exactly how it's viewed legally, is that if you cannot be proved to be guilty, you must be treated as though innocent. And that's,
but you are innocent in the eyes of the law.
You are innocent in the eyes of the law, yeah, but that doesn't mean that nobody's ever done something and
got away with it. No, that's true, but we can't imply that.
And I'm not. But what I'm saying is that if you look at the way that this trial has run, there are lots and lots of aspects of it that I think a lot of people are quite reasonably angry about. And, 4,000 people don't show up outside Dublin City Hall, unless they've got something really serious.
Do you agree that
Well, 4,000 people don't turn up outside Dublin City Hall unless they've got some really serious reason to be there. Is not a very intellectual argument. People have turned up in their thousands to scream abuse at one another across streets, across fences, across police lines, alt-right, alt-left and all that nonsense. She was skating on very thin ground there, Smurthwaite, considering that these guys have said, listen, we've been found not guilty, and anybody who implies that we did in fact do it, we will come after them very strongly. Tell you what I don't like about it, and it's the only thing I mean, it's a big story, you know, it's a big story in Ireland, and as well as Jean Ann, I did have some other messages on Facebook asking would I cover it. It's very difficult for me to cover it because there's nothing I can say. You know, some of the text messages that these men exchanged among themselves, or some of the WhatsApp messages, are messages that they're not nice. Doesn't mean that the men were guilty, of course, far from it. But I don't like the sort of terminology that some of these guys using terms like spit roasted and smashed and roasted and all of that sort of stuff, you know. I don't like those terms because this is the sort of garbage. If you, we spent, I think, an hour speaking about a year and a half ago about pornography with a number of experts on pornography and what it does to people, what it does to your mind, how it changes the brain, the physiology of the brain. And we realised, looking at modern pornography, that it's incredibly violent. It's incredibly violent pornography, isn't it? Right? Don't say you don't look at pornography. I won't believe you. No more than I'll say is that I don't or haven't ever looked at pornography, because you wouldn't believe me either. Let's be adult about it. But today's pornography is brutally violent porn. Go to any of the big porn sites, look at the videos on the front page. They are of women being brutally violated. Brutally violated. It's not the sort of porn that I used to watch when I was a teenage boy, when my grandfather, Jerry Flanagan, the great Jerry, had a video run. What was a video run? Well, he was a bit of a half-Adele boy, my granddad. He used to copy videos of all the latest films, and he would drive around a housing estate and he would rent them out for £1. And then he would collect them the following day. And he was a top man, my granddad, right? He's a top man. He's still alive and well. And he always had a couple of blue movies, right? And the films were situations with really cheesy music of men and women having sex. Today's porn, brutal sex. What's that got to do with Paddy Jackson and his mate? Nothing. Something. Jackson and his mate are innocent. But the terminology they're using, smashed her up, spit roasted her, that's the terminology from the pornography that is on display when you use any of the big pornography sites. Xvideos, Xhamster, Pornhub, these are the major ones. Go to their home pages and it's brutal porn. I couldn't get titillated by that sort of stuff, and I couldn't get excited about being intimate with a woman while another man is there at the same time. But this is a whole culture shift. Again, it has nothing to do with their innocence or guilt. They are innocent. They've been found innocent by a jury of their peers, and people have to respect that. But the whole culture thing is very interesting, isn't it? I would have thought. And I know I'm not doing a very good job of making the point I'm trying to make here. And it's not because I'm censoring myself or I'm worried about what people might think. I've been very honest here, right? In what I've said. But there's something going on with the pornography. A friend of mine is telling me that it's porn talk, the text messages, and that's the pity of it, really, that those young chaps have been programmed by it, by the porn they're subjected. And I would say yes. Now forget Jackson and the other guy. They're innocent. They were found innocent, and that's the end of it. And this Kate Smurthwaite and others can't whinge about that and say, oh, well, it doesn't mean they're innocent. Well, we can't have a society like that. I'm sorry. Like it or lump it, you can't go saying, oh, well, they might not be. They're innocent. They were found innocent. That's the way it is. Leaving aside Jackson and his mate and forgetting all about that, there is a tendency towards younger blokes wanting to be involved in sex involving 2 or 3 men with 1 woman. I don't understand that. Where that's coming from. I have no idea. Is it related to Christ? Is it related to a tendency towards bisexuality in more young men? Is something going on there that we don't know about? I don't know either. But it's interesting reading the comments made, not just by them. We've seen football players, we've seen their text messages become public, and some of the terminology they use, smashed her. And that's the term for violent sex, not for intimate sex, intimate caressing, kissing, sex, sensual sex. This is brutally violent sex they're talking about when they're talking about smashing women. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think that's the most interesting thing that came out of that trial. But it's got nothing to do with the verdict. These guys are innocent and people have to like it. Now, the women asking questions about how the woman was treated on the stand, those might be very valid questions. I don't know. Like I said, I think it might be very unusual for a witness, even the woman claiming to be a victim, even the claimant. It's very unusual to spend 7 days, I would have thought, on the witness stand out of 42 days. Very long trial indeed. Anyway, there you go. Violent porn and how it's kind of completely taken over porn is a very interesting subject, and my friend Gail Dines, the academic in Boston who's come on this programme in the past to talk about it, we might get Gail back on. But she's done groundbreaking work on what this porn is doing, not just the young men but the young women who watch it as well. The effect it's having on them, on their minds, right? Okay, I'm going to shut up. Well, I didn't think we'd last the hour, but we lasted the hour. Thanks for listening to Sunday View. Look, enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday. Do yourself a favour. Get off social media today. Get off the internet. Turn off the news and get out in the fresh air and forget about it. And if somebody even tries to talk to you about politics, tell them to feck off. Disconnect today and enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday. Look after yourselves and one another. I will be back with you on Tuesday. You know tomorrow's a bank holiday and I don't do bank holidays. I won't be with you tomorrow, Monday, but I'm back on Tuesday and I have a very powerful, what I think will be a very powerful conversation with a lady that I've gotten to know through her story on the programme on Tuesday, okay? So enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you are doing the bank holiday thing tomorrow, if you don't have to work, enjoy that as well. Going to leave you with some music from The Who. It's called Won't Get Fooled Again. Righty, that's it. I'm out of here. Bye for now. Speak Tuesday. Bye.